I still remember the exact moment my husband told me I was worthless. Not in those exact words, he was too clever for that. But the meaning was crystal clear as he stood in our kitchen, his designer watch glinting under the pendant lights I had picked out when we renovated. 10 years, Rachel. 10 years you've been sitting at home while I built everything we have. His emphasis on sitting cut through me like a knife. And what do you have to show for it? I looked down at the dinner I had prepared, his favorite lasagna that had taken me 3 hours between school pickups and soccer practice, and felt something inside me crack. Not break, not yet. Just crack. What he couldn't see was that this crack would eventually bring down our entire marriage, his career, and the smug little world he had constructed where he was the hero and I was just furniture. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning of the end. I met Daniel during my senior year of college. I was studying marketing with dreams of running my own agency someday. He was in his final year of business school, already fielding offers from top firms. Handsome, ambitious, and charismatic, Daniel seemed like the perfect package. He married a year after graduation. I landed a position at a growing marketing firm while Daniel climbed the corporate ladder at a tech company. For 3 years, we were that power couple everyone envies: dual incomes, trendy apartment, exotic vacations documented meticulously on social media. Then came the twins, Emma and Ethan. The pregnancy was difficult. Bed rest for the final trimester meant I had to take early leave from work. After they were born, we crunched the numbers and made what seemed like a practical decision. Childcare for twins in our city would eat up almost my entire salary. Since Daniel was making considerably more, it made financial sense for me to stay home until they started school. It's just for a few years, Daniel assured me, squeezing my hand. Your career will be waiting. Those few years turned into 10. When the twins were 4, I got pregnant again, our surprise baby, Sophie. Every time I considered returning to work, life threw another curveball. Sophie's developmental delays requiring extra therapy appointments, my mother's cancer diagnosis, Daniel's promotion requiring him to travel more frequently, leaving me solo parenting for weeks at a time. I won't lie and say I didn't sometimes enjoy being home with my children. I loved witnessing their first steps, first words, the small everyday miracles that Daniel only caught glimpses of. I managed our household with the efficiency of a small company. I coordinated schedules, maintained relationships with family and friends, handled all the emotional labor that kept our family functioning, but somewhere along the way, Daniel's perspective shifted. Success at work inflated his ego while simultaneously narrowing his vision of what success looked like. The appreciation for my work at home gradually faded, replaced by a subtle condescension. It started with small comments: "Must be nice to watch Netflix while I'm stuck in meetings all day. The house is a mess, what exactly do you do all day? Sarah just made partner at her firm. Remember when you two were at the same level?" Each comment was a paper cut, individually minor but cumulatively excruciating. Tried explaining once how exhausting it was to be on 3 children from dawn until dusk. His response? "I manage a team of 30 people with million-dollar targets. You're telling me 3 kids is harder?" But that night in the kitchen, as he dismissed a decade of my life as sitting at home, something fundamentally changed. Maybe it was the way he said it in front of Emma, now 12 and absorbing every nuance of our interaction. Maybe it was that I'd just spent the afternoon consoling Sophie through another frustrating therapy session. Or maybe 10 years of accumulated resentment had finally reached critical mass. What prompted this charming assessment of my contributions? I asked, keeping my voice level. Daniel loosened his tie, pouring himself a generous scotch. "Melissa got promoted to VP today. Remember her? She started at the company same time you started at your firm." "Ah, Melissa." His colleague he mentioned with increasing frequency lately. Always Melissa's brilliant presentation or Melissa's innovative approach. I had a gnawing suspicion about Melissa but pushed it down. "And this made you think about my failures because—" "Not failures, Rachel. Choices. You chose this." He gestured vaguely around our kitchen. Some women choose advancement. I felt that crack inside me widen. I chose our family. And I didn't? I provide everything here. He took another sip of scotch. My sister works full-time with 4 kids and still manages to keep her house spotless and look presentable. There it was, the comparison. Always the comparison. His sister, his colleagues' wives, random women he read about in business magazines who had it all. Never acknowledging their nannies, housekeepers, or family nearby. Never recognizing the privilege that makes having it all possible. "You're right," I said finally, my voice strangely calm. 10 years is a long time. Maybe too long. He barely registered my comment, already scrolling through emails on his phone. That night, I lay awake long after he fell asleep, staring at the ceiling fan whirring above us. 10 years. A decade of my life dedicated to our family, and he saw it as nothing. Worthless, I got up and went to our home office. My old marketing portfolio was still saved somewhere. I found it buried in folders, dated artifacts from another life. The work looked embarrassingly outdated now. Social media was barely a marketing channel when I left the workforce. Now it dominated everything. Opened a new browser tab and typed, "How to restart your career after being a stay-at-home mom." The next morning, I dropped the kids at school and did something I hadn't done in years. I got a coffee alone and made a plan. Not an emotional, reactionary plan. A strategic one. First step, skills assessment. What did I still have? What needed updating? I spent the next week researching online courses in digital marketing while maintaining my usual routine. Daniel noticed nothing, too absorbed in his upcoming business trip to Chicago, with Melissa and the team. Of course, the day after he left, I registered for a digital marketing certification program I could complete online. I used money from my personal savings, a small account I'd maintained by selling crafts on Etsy and doing occasional freelance work for local businesses needing basic websites. These were projects I'd never mentioned to Daniel because they seemed too small to matter in his world of corporate acquisitions and 6-figure bonuses. For 3 months, I studied during every free moment, during Sophie's therapy sessions, after the kids went to bed, early mornings before the house woke up. I joined online communities of women returning to the workforce and absorbed their advice like oxygen. Meanwhile, Daniel's trips grew more frequent. He started coming home later, blaming project deadlines. His texts became sporadic and perfunctory. The distance between us widened into a chasm, but strangely, I felt more focused than I had in years. Then came the day I found the hotel receipt in his suit pocket while doing laundry. 1 room, Chicago Marriott, but the folio showed room service for 2 repeatedly. Champagne charges. A spa visit for a couple's massage. I didn't confront him immediately. Instead, I accelerated my plan. With my new certification complete, I reached out to former colleagues. Most had moved on to other companies, but one, Jamie, had started her own digital marketing agency focusing on small businesses. We met for coffee, and I was honest about everything: my outdated skills, my gap years, my crumbling marriage. "Actually," Jamie said, swirling her latte, "your gap years might be your biggest asset." "How do you figure?" "You've essentially been the CEO, CFO, and COO of a household. Budgeting, scheduling, conflict resolution, crisis management, these are transferable skills. Plus, you understand the mom demographic, which most of my clients want to target." She leaned forward. "I need someone part-time to handle social media strategy for a few clients. The pay isn't great to start, but it could grow." I accepted on the spot. Working remotely meant I could still handle the kids' schedules. I told Daniel I was dabbling in some freelance work. He nodded absently, barely looking up from his phone. For 2 more months, I worked, learned, and gathered evidence of his affair. Screenshots of texts that popped up from Melissa while his phone was charging. Credit card statements showing dinner charges for 2 on nights he claimed to be working late. I wasn't being paranoid. I was building a case, not just for a potential divorce, but for myself. Proof that I wasn't crazy for feeling unvalued, The breaking point came during the twins' birthday dinner. Daniel was late, again. The kids kept glancing at the door, their disappointment palpable as the candles on the cake melted lower. When he finally arrived, reeking of expensive perfume that wasn't mine, he didn't even apologize. Just slid into his chair with a quick, "Traffic was brutal." After the kids went to bed, I confronted him in our bedroom. "Are you having an affair with Melissa?" He froze for only a second before his face composed itself. "Don't be ridiculous." "Daniel, I know. I have receipts, texts, everything." I kept my voice steady. "I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just tired of the disrespect." He sat heavily on the edge of our bed. Then, instead of further denial, he said something that stunned me. "She sees me, Rachel. She appreciates my work, my ambition. She's excited about the same things I am. And she doesn't have 3 kids demanding her attention," I added quietly. He looked up, surprised by my calm tone. "It's not just that. She's doing something with her life." There it was again, the implication that motherhood was nothing, that managing a household was nothing. "I want a divorce," I said simply. What happened next was both exactly what I expected and still somehow shocking. Instead of fighting for our marriage, Daniel seemed almost relieved. We discussed logistics with the detached efficiency of business partners dissolving a venture. He would move out immediately, renting an apartment nearby to maintain his relationship with the children. I would keep the house temporarily until we decided next steps. What Daniel didn't know was that I had already consulted a divorce attorney, one recommended by another mom returning to the workforce after discovering her husband's infidelity. I knew my rights, the value of my contributions to our marriage, and most importantly, I had already secured copies of all our financial records. The next day, Daniel packed a suitcase while I sat at the kitchen island, working on a client presentation. He paused, watching me typing efficiently. "This little job, it won't be enough, you know," he said, his tone almost gentle. "My lawyers won't consider your earning potential very high after being out of the workforce so long." I looked up from my laptop. "I'm aware of how the system works, Daniel. I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm being realistic. You'll get child support, of course, and temporary alimony, but eventually you'll need to support yourself." He sighed. "Maybe you could get some kind of administrative job. Something with regular hours for the kids." The condescension in his voice made that crack inside me widen further, but now it felt less like breaking and more like shedding an outgrown skin. "I'll figure it out," I said, returning to my work after he left. I sat in the sudden silence of our house, my house now, and felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. That night, I called Jamie. "Is your offer still open for more responsibility at the agency?" The divorce process was predictably messy. Daniel was generous with child support but fought viciously over assets. His lawyer emphasized my limited earning potential at every turn. Meanwhile, Daniel moved Melissa into his new apartment within weeks. What neither of them counted on was my determination. I threw myself into work at Jamie's agency, quickly taking on more clients and responsibilities. With my first-hand understanding of the target demographic, my campaigns consistently outperformed expectations. 3 months in, Jamie offered me a full partnership. "Your client retention rate is twice industry standard," she explained. "And 3 potential clients specifically requested to work with you after seeing the Mitchell campaign." The Mitchell campaign had been my breakthrough, a rebranding for a struggling line of household products. Instead of the typical aspirational, perfectly organized home life most cleaning products advertised, I created content acknowledging the messy reality of family life. Real homes, real messes, real solutions. No judgment, just understanding. It resonated deeply with overwhelmed parents who felt seen rather than inadequate. 6 months after Daniel moved out, Jamie and I decided to expand. We secured a small business loan and moved from her home office to actual commercial space. We hired 3 employees, including one specifically to help me manage the logistics of work and single parenthood. Didn't tell Daniel about any of this. During handoffs with the kids, he would ask vague questions about that social media thing, and I would provide equally vague answers. It was petty, perhaps, but satisfying to have something that was entirely mine, unshaped by his perception. The children adjusted to our new reality with varying degrees of acceptance. Emma, now 13, was coldly furious with her father, particularly after meeting Melissa. Ethan withdrew into video games and required therapy to process his feelings of abandonment. Sophie, at 6, was confused but adaptable. 9 months into our separation, with divorce proceedings moving slowly through the courts, Daniel lost his job. The company underwent restructuring, and his entire division was eliminated. His severance package was generous, but the job market for executives his age was competitive. Weeks of unemployment stretched into months, then came news that made everything surreal: Melissa was pregnant. She quit her job to focus on her health after a difficult first trimester. Suddenly, Daniel was unemployed with a pregnant girlfriend, mounting legal bills, and child support payments he was increasingly resentful about making. Learned all this from Emma, who reported family developments with the dispassionate accuracy of a war correspondent. When she mentioned that Daniel had taken a temporary job delivering packages for an Amazon contractor, I felt no satisfaction, only concern for my children's financial security. Meanwhile, our agency landed a contract with a national brand. The workload was intense but exhilarating. I was working harder than ever but on my own terms, creating systems that accommodated my family's needs. I hired a part-time nanny/housekeeper, something Daniel had always dismissed as unnecessary when I requested help, and found the household ran more smoothly with this support. 1 year and 2 days after that fateful night in the kitchen, Daniel came to pick up the kids looking noticeably worn. His luxury car had been replaced by a modest used sedan. His designer clothes appeared slightly rumpled. After the children went to the car, he lingered on my porch. "The house looks good," he said awkwardly. "You've kept things up." "Thanks. We're doing well." I didn't elaborate. He shifted uncomfortably. "Listen, my attorney mentioned your business is doing better than expected." I couldn't help but smile. Of course, that's why he was here. Money. "We're growing," I acknowledged. "Rachel, I've been thinking about us, about everything." His voice softened into the charismatic tone I once found irresistible. "I made mistakes. Huge mistakes. Melissa and I, it's complicated now with the baby coming, but I miss our family. Our life." I stared at him, genuinely stunned by his audacity. "You miss our life? Or your life? The comfortable house, the clean laundry, the home-cooked meals? That's not fair. I miss you. The kids need both parents together." He stepped closer. "We built something good before I screwed up. Maybe we could rebuild?" For a moment, one tiny, shameful moment, I felt the pull of familiarity. The ease of returning to a known quantity, even a flawed one. Then I remembered his words: 10 years sitting at home. The countless diminishments. The affair conducted without even the dignity of discretion. "Daniel, I'm the CEO and co-founder of a digital marketing agency with 12 employees and a projected revenue of $1.7 million this year." I said it calmly, watching his expression shift from persuasive to confused. The partnership offer I mentioned last week during mediation wasn't a bluff or a small side hustle. "I'm actually your ex-lawyer's newest client. My agency is handling their digital rebrand." His face went through a fascinating series of transformations: disbelief, then shock, then something like wounded pride. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice small. "For the same reason you never asked," I replied. "You weren't interested in my potential, only in how I served yours." He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Maybe he was. "So there's no chance. We'll always be connected through our children," I said gently. "But romantically?" "That chapter closed the moment you decided I was worthless." He flinched at the word. "I never said you were worthless. You didn't have to say it. You showed me in 1,000 ways. I stepped back toward my door. The irony is, I never would have found this version of myself if you hadn't made me feel so worthless. So in a weird way, thank you. As he walked back to his car where our children waited, his shoulders slumped with the weight of recognition. Not just of what he had lost, but of what he had failed to see when it was right in front of him. I closed my door and returned to my laptop, where a potential investor was waiting for a virtual meeting about taking our agency national. The house was quiet except for the gentle hum of my nanny's vacuum upstairs, help I now provided for myself without guilt or justification. That crack inside me that started in the kitchen a year ago had finally completed its work. But instead of breaking me apart, it had broken me open, creating space for something new to grow. The real twist in this story isn't that I succeeded despite Daniel's dismissal of me. It's not even that he ended up delivering packages while I built a thriving business. The twist is that I discovered I never needed his validation in the first place. My worth wasn't contingent on his recognition or anyone else's. Those 10 years weren't wasted, they were training. Managing a household, mediating sibling conflicts, stretching resources, multitasking under pressure, these weren't signs of my stagnation but evidence of my capabilities. 2 years have passed since our divorce was finalized. Daniel eventually found another corporate position, though less prestigious than his previous role. He married Melissa after their son was born. Our co-parenting relationship is cordial if not warm. The children split time between households, adapting to new family configurations with resilience that amazes me. My agency continues to thrive, recently opening a second office in Austin. Jamie and I have been featured in Business Insider's Women to Watch and will be speaking at an upcoming marketing conference in New York. More importantly, I've found a balance that works for me and my children. Some days I still feel overwhelmed juggling it all, but the difference is I no longer need to pretend perfection. I've built a life that accommodates reality rather than fights against it. Last week, Emma came home from visiting her father and flopped dramatically onto the couch beside me as I reviewed quarterly projections. Dad asked me if you're seeing anyone, she said, eyebrows raised conspiratorially. I laughed. What did you tell him? I told him you're too busy building an empire. She grinned. And that the guy who owns that new restaurant downtown keeps sending you free appetizers when you go there. I closed my laptop. The appropriate term is expanding a business, not building an empire. Whatever. Dad looked totally jealous. She picked at a thread on the couch cushion. He told Melissa that he built you up from nothing. I told him that was a weird way to pronounce underestimated you for a decade. I hugged her, this fiercely loyal daughter who sees everything so clearly. You didn't really say that, did you? No, she admitted. But I thought it really hard. Later that night, I stood in the same kitchen where Daniel had dismissed 10 years of my life and felt a profound sense of peace. The house would soon be on the market, a mutual decision to properly divide assets and give everyone a fresh start. I ran my hand along the countertop where I had prepared countless meals, helped with countless homework assignments, planned countless family moments. This kitchen had witnessed my lowest point, the moment when someone I loved declared my contributions insignificant. But it had also witnessed my rebirth, the late nights planning my business, the first client call I took while stirring pasta, the celebration champagne when we signed our biggest account. People often ask if I'm angry at Daniel for what he did. The truth is more complicated than anger. I'm grateful for the children we created together. I'm grateful for the push that forced me to reclaim my professional identity. I'm even grateful for the painful clarity his betrayal provided, but mostly, I'm grateful to have discovered that my worth was never his to determine in the first place. Oh, anyone listening to this who feels invisible, undervalued, or trapped in someone else's definition of your worth, know this: you are not what others say you are. The very skills you're told don't matter may be your greatest strengths in contexts you haven't yet explored. The limitations others place on you exist primarily in their imagination, not in reality. 10 years doesn't define your future. Neither does 20. Or 30. The only moment that defines you is the one where you decide to see yourself clearly, not through someone else's limited perspective, but through the lens of your own untapped potential. It's the moment everything changes. That's the moment you stop being worthless and start being worth more than they ever imagined. If this story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever been underestimated or had to reinvent yourself after a major life change? I'd love to hear your experiences. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of personal transformation and unexpected triumph. Remember, sometimes the people who underestimate you do you the greatest favor. They give you the freedom to surprise them, and more importantly, to surprise yourself.